Ave Maria. Mothers of America, let your kids go to the movies. Get them out of the house so they won't know what you're up to. It's true that fresh air is good for the body, but what about the soul that grows in darkness, embossed by silvery images? And when you grow old, as grow old you must, they won't hate you, they won't criticize you, they won't know. They'll be in some glamorous country they first saw on a Saturday afternoon, or playing hooky. They may even be grateful to you for their first sexual experience, which only cost you a quarter and didn't upset the peaceful home. They will know where candy bars come from and gratuitous bags of popcorn, as gratuitous as leaving the movie before it's over with a pleasant stranger whose apartment is in the Heaven on Earth building near the Williamsburg Bridge. Oh, mothers, you will have made the little tykes so happy, because if nobody does pick them up in the movies, they won't know the difference. And if somebody does, it'll be sheer gravy. And they'll have been truly entertained either way, instead of hanging around the yard or up in their room hating you prematurely, since you won't have done anything horribly mean yet, except keeping them from the darker joys. It's unforgivable, the latter. So don't blame me if you won't take this advice and the family breaks up and your children grow old and blind in front of a TV set, seeing movies you wouldn't let them see when they were young.
That was great.
Such a devilish poem. And you gave me lots of poems to consider, to read and talk about. This one really jumped off the page because you can't believe he's writing something like this.
Yeah.
It sort of pushes the envelope in all sorts of ways, the irony of it and the comedy of it and the danger of it.
And the way he's making fun, the way he's making fun of these mothers, these moralistic mothers who think that, you know, the first step is the movies, the next step is pedophiles taking your child off to buildings near the Williamsburg Bridge.
But he's also making fun of poetry itself in a way.
How do you see that?
Well, when you think about poetry, it's a sort of ethereal and
it's so elevated.
higher art. And it's for your sensitive feelings. It's to stir feelings of love or melancholy, you know,
right, grave,
ode to autumn, all of these sort of tremulous feelings. Well,
right, it's serious business.
Yeah.
And he's using the poem
to turn
for these
everything on its head. I mean, I have to say, I'm no expert on Frank O'Hara. I come to him late. I sort of knew about him without ever reading a line he wrote. You're the one who's educated me about Frank O'Hara. But my God, what a character! It makes me want to read more and more.
And every point you raise makes me want to go further with that one. That contrast between poetry and the movies, or poetry and the church. You know, where do we situate? I think you've helped me think about where we situate poetry in relation to those two things. And what should art be?
Yeah.
Right? So where is poetry?
Another of the poems you gave me, he talked about how he loves bad movies just as much as good ones.
Yeah. I want to be as vulgar.
Yeah. He's got a great appetite for all human experience, including the sort of base and vulgar.
Yeah. And what would a poetry be like? I think it might be like this poetry that wanted to be like bad movies.
Back in those days, the movies were a darker place. You know, you went to the movies in a big dark theater with a bunch of strangers. Nowadays, you watch True Blood and Breaking Bad and
at home,
The L Word, all at home in the privacy of your home. And
that's so interesting.
And the whole notion of being sent off to the movies on a Saturday afternoon, or sneaking off to the movies on a Saturday afternoon. You know, listen to Marty Scorsese talk about that. That's when movies grabbed him and made him into a movie maker.
When it was transgressive, when it felt like sex.
When you watched watched 4 movies in a row, or watched one movie 4 times in a row. You know, because it had such hold of your imagination.
And you gorged yourself on low pleasures, like popcorn and candy. Here, low gratuitous pleasures that serve
popcorn,
that serve no purpose.
And it only costs 25 cents.
And your mother pays the tuition.
Yes.
That is, and I just keep coming back in my mind to what you said about poetry, about how we expect poetry to be really serious. Frank O'Hara does say that, you know, poetry shouldn't be like the mother who's always trying to get you to eat cooked meat.
Yeah.
And this is a poem, too, that seems to be saying, no, mothers, no nuclear family, no wholesomeness. That's not what poetry is about. No, the poetry of the schoolroom and of the college and that belongs to the church. No to all of that.
Or it need not be. It doesn't have to be about all those things.
It doesn't, and that it's a rush, right? That poetry is, and I love that point about you have to sneak into the movie. You have to sneak away to go to the movies. You have to sort of sneak into the movie. That's part of the pleasure.
And no matter what kind of poetry reading a poem is an intensely personal experience. It's just you and the poem. You rarely share it with other people.
Oh, so that's intimate. So the poetry also that poetry as O'Hara is allowing us to see it here is sort of the darkened theater of your secret.
Sort of, yeah.
A little of your secret life.
Kind of equating paying a quarter for your child to go to the movies, and who knows, he may even have a sexual experience there, so it only costs you a quarter. It's equating it with the high cost of tuition to go to college. I mean, it's like you're educating your child for almost nothing.
Right.
I mean,
and he is saying that where our education happens, right? Where we learn, where we grow, where we emancipate ourselves is not in college, and right, is in these cheaper.
Yeah.
Right.
It's in life. It's down and dirty in life.
It's down and dirty, and I think I want to follow you because I think you're right. He also does allow us to think about what role our parents play in our sexual development, which is weird, right? And this is a poem about breaking away, right? About a kind of Oedipal. If we wanted to get very technical about, you've really got to be a sexual being, it's got to be separate from your mother. But also it seems about how our parents are always part of it.
Yeah. No, it's an extremely Freudian poem. It's all about separating from your parents.
All about separating from your parents.
And parents allowing the separation at some point.
Yeah, and allowing their own, right? Or what will you become? You will become that person.
That hated person.
That person watching a TV rather than the movies, right? It's unforgivable, the latter, so don't blame me if you won't take this advice and the family breaks up and your children go old and blind in front of a TV set, seeing movies you wouldn't let them see when they were young.
Yeah.
That old and blind with the two seeings.
Yeah.
And how do you get blind?
Up in their room hating you prematurely since you won't have done anything horribly mean yet.
That's so funny.
This is all. It's almost like it's your job to be horribly mean and permissive. This sort of two polarities.
Oh, that's interesting. Right.
The tension between the two.
Yeah, that's what it is to be a parent.
Yeah, it's this constant mediating between permissiveness and strictness.
I think that actually was what it was, what it's like to be.
Right.
You won't have done anything. So, and he gives us there that the children always do misinterpret us, right?
Yeah.
And
they absolutely, you cannot you cannot bring up children without being hated at some point. You know. If
Right.
you're
And you'll be hated
if
either
you're
way.
If you're lucky, the love outweighs the hate ultimately.
But only
But
if you, I mean, there is a bit of child rearing manual in this, but only if you really give them some space. I know Frank O'Hara used to take the bus every weekend from Grafton, where he lived near Worcester, to the Boston Conservatory, where he studied piano, and he wanted to be a pianist. And I mean, he was in some ways doing something very socially sanctioned. He was studying classical music, but he had that freedom,
Yeah.
right? That
Yeah, when I was in my second and the last 2 years of high school, I lived in Princeton, New Jersey, and every Saturday morning took the Trailways bus into New York City by myself to go to the Art Students League, because I wanted to be an artist then. Took figure drawing classes with nude models, with a bunch of high school kids from music and art, you know, and had an entire day in New York before getting on the bus to get home. The last bus was like at 11:30 p.m. That was, and those were my.
Oh my!
This is how I relate. Not that I had any first sexual experiences, sadly, but it was just the exhilaration of being on my own in New York
That's
City.
right. And there's an erotics to that, right? Frank O'Hara is always, you know, he's touching. He writes these poems, including this one, at lunch, sprung from his job. You go reeling around the city, looking at the glitter of the buildings and smelling the perfume of, you know, an aftershave of guys you like, gliding past them, and just the sensorium of the city, as you said, is a primal and immature pleasure that doesn't actually need sexual consummation.